Have you ever felt like you're just, I don't know, drowning in the sheer volume of news? Especially when it comes to the endless culture wars.
Oh, definitely. It feels relentless sometimes.
Yeah, like every single day there's a new outrage, a new debate, and everything just seems dialed up to 11.
Absolutely. The intensity is unmistakable.
Well, what if there's actually a deeper story going on? Surprising patterns, powerful forces kind of working beneath the surface that might explain why our world feels so incredibly polarized right now.
That's a fascinating idea.
That's precisely our mission today on the Deep Dive. We're going to unpack some really interesting source material,
Okay.
stuff that connects sociological observations, big technological shifts, and this is interesting, an astrological lens.
Astrology. Okay, I'm intrigued. How does that fit in?
Well, the goal is to sort of reveal a deeper narrative about generational anxiety and what we're calling cultural absolutism.
Cultural absolutism. Got it.
Think of this as maybe a shortcut to understanding the why behind all the intensity in current cultural conversations. We want to offer you a fresh framework.
Sounds useful. What kind of sources are we talking about?
We're pulling from compelling research on generational shifts, some sharp analysis of social media's impact, which is huge, obviously, and even some, well, astrological texts that offer a pretty unique historical and predictive view.
A real mix, then. Sociological, technological, astrological.
Exactly. Let's dive in. We want to start with a concept from the social psychologist Jonathan Haidt. He calls it the Great Rewiring.
The Great Rewiring. Okay.
He argues that something pretty fundamental shifted right around 2012.
2012. What did he see?
What he observed was this alarming, really steep rise in U.S. teen anxiety, depression, and self-harm stats.
Wow. A steep rise. Not gradual.
No, he pinpoints it quite specifically. And he connects this inflection point directly to the widespread adoption of smartphones and social media platforms.
Ah, the tech connection. Makes sense timing-wise.
Right? Think about the timeline. Instagram launches 2010. Facebook had already opened up to younger users a bit before that.
And by 2012?
These devices and platforms were just ubiquitous. Every kid had one, basically.
Yeah, that tracks.
But what's particularly striking are his classroom observations.
Yeah.
Haidt noticed that students starting with the class of 2016, so these are the kids entering college right around 2012.
Okay, that specific cohort.
They seem dramatically different from the students who came before. He described them as, well, more fragile, much more anxious.
Fragile. How so?
And really oriented toward what he termed safetyism.
Safetyism, what does that mean exactly?
It's this pervasive focus on emotional and, physical safety, often leading to a really strong desire to avoid discomfort or challenge, sometimes even at the expense of open discussion.
Avoiding discomfort, I see.
He said it was a really profound and, importantly, sudden shift he saw in the classroom environment.
Okay, so that's Haidt's Great Rewiring around 2012, linked to tech and showing up as anxiety and safetyism in young people entering college.
Exactly. Now, this is where it gets really interesting when we bring in the other perspective.
The astrological one.
Yeah.
Okay, lay it on me. It's remarkable how that sociological observation lines up almost uncannily with an astrological perspective. This is where we can introduce the concept of the Pluto in Sagittarius generation.
Pluto and Sagittarius generation. Okay, who are they?
These are individuals born roughly between 1995 and 2008, give or take.
95 to 2008.
Yeah.
Got it. So Pluto, Sagittarius.
Yes.
What does that mean astrologically?
Well, when we talk about Pluto in astrology, we're looking at deep transformation, power dynamics, sometimes unconscious generational drives, intensity.
Okay, deep stuff.
And Sagittarius. That's the sign associated with beliefs, truth, higher meaning, exploration, but also sometimes exaggeration or grand crusades, righteousness even.
Beliefs and crusades, I can see where this might be going.
Exactly. So when Pluto, this intense planet of transformation, transits through Sagittarius, the sign of belief and truth, well, these intense transformative forces combine with that drive for absolute truth.
Absolute truth, okay.
This leads to certain themes. Things like overheated idealism, where everything, no matter how small it might seem, tends to become an existential moral struggle.
Everything's a huge deal, morally speaking.
Pretty much. There's also dogmatism and drama. That's kind of Sagittarius's tendency towards exaggeration meeting Pluto's raw intensity. It can result in very all or nothing thinking.
Black and white, no gray areas.
Often, yeah. And this generation also shows a strong push for cultural crusades. Big, passionate movements.
Like what?
Well, that could manifest as progressive woke movements or, on the flip side, reactive anti-woke movements.
Hmm.
The style is the key, that crusading energy.
Okay, so hate describes this big shift in student behavior around 2012, fragility, safetyism.
Yeah.
You're saying the Pluto and Sagittarius generation born 95 to '08. Where's the overlap?
Precisely. That cohort, hate identified, the students entering college right around 2012.
Yeah.
They represent the very first wave of this Pluto and Sagittarius generation, born 1995, 1996. They'd be turning 17, 18 in 2012.
Whoa. Okay, that is an uncanny alignment.
Isn't it? In both frameworks, the sociological and the astrological, they end up describing a very similar tendency to absolutize experience.
Absolutized experience. Explain that a bit more.
Well, in Hate's framework, you see it in how social conflict gets interpreted through the lens of trauma, harm, safety. Everything becomes a matter of potential injury.
Right, the safetyism aspect.
Yeah, and in the astrological framework, it's about elevating your truth claims, your cultural battles, into these grand existential crusades. Life or death stakes, almost.
So it's the same intensity, just described differently.
Kind of. That everything is drama, everything is dogma quality, which is really tied to that Pluto in Sagittarius energy. It seems to have fueled both the early 2010 student activism and the later right-wing backlash against it.
Interesting. So it's not just one side.
No, the energy itself seems to foster that polarization.
Okay, so this tendency to absolutize experience,
Yeah.
it sounds like it could manifest in really powerful ways. Can you walk us through some concrete examples from the research? How did this play out, say, in the 2010s and then maybe shift into the 2020s?
Certainly. If you look at the 2010s, especially on university campuses, you saw really intense left-leaning activism, calls for safe spaces, new speech codes, a real moral urgency around identity politics.
Okay, yeah, I remember that period well.
That was really the overheated idealism and the cultural crusading impulse of that first wave of Pluto and Sagittarius students finding its voice in that environment.
Makes sense. And then the 2020s.
Then, as we moved into the 2020s, we saw the emergence of a strong right-wing counter-reaction, these various anti-woke crusades.
Right, the backlash.
And the sources we looked at are quite clear on this. While these movements are opposite in their political aims, they're described as being equally moralistic, equally absolute in their focus. It's the same style of conflict, just flipped.
Huh. So it's like a mirror image in terms of the intensity and the moral certainty.
Very much so. It raises an important point.
Which is?
This Pluto and Sagittarius energy, it isn't really confined to one side of the political spectrum. It seems to radicalize both sides. It generates a culture war dynamic where both poles adopt these highly absolutist, uncompromising postures.
Creating this intense friction we see everywhere.
Exactly. It's almost like the energy itself is the polarization mechanism. If we step back and connect this to the bigger picture, the influence of Pluto and Sagittarius can be traced chronologically in some truly striking ways.
Okay, let's hear the timeline.
When Pluto first entered Sagittarius back in 1995, we started to see that Sagittarian drive for absolute truth and belief, amplified by Pluto's intensity, expressing itself on a global scale.
Globally. How?
Well, this period coincides with a significant intensification of religious and ideological conflicts worldwide. Think about the resurgence and growth of Islamic jihad movements like Al-Qaeda during the mid to late 90s, pushing their ideological truth with immense absolute force.
Right, that was definitely ramping up then.
And this culminated very strikingly with 9/11 in 2001.
Yeah.
Our sources actually call 9/11 an archetypal Pluto in Sagittarius event.
Archetypal, why?
Think about it. Apocalyptic imagery, heavily symbol-laden, tied directly to global religious dogma and a massive cultural confrontation. It had that all-or-nothing, absolute moral conflict right at its core.
That makes a chilling kind of sense, viewed through that lens.
Doesn't it? Following that, in the early 2000s, domestically, particularly in the U.S., we saw the rise of the War on Terror.
Of course.
Which was often framed in quasi-religious terms,
Yeah.
Good versus evil, axis of evil.
Very black and white, yeah.
This is arguably when political polarization really began to take on that absolutist moral crusade tone that we recognize so clearly today. The Pluto and Sagittarius energy that drama and dogma was manifesting on a global and national political scale.
Okay, so global conflict, then national polarization. What happens next?
Then comes 2012. Remember Hate's observation?
The shift in the classroom, yeah.
By 2012, the first cohort of freshmen born in 1994-95, The very first wave of Pluto in Sagittarius individuals started entering higher education.
Right when hate noticed the change.
Exactly. It matches precisely. That heightened fragility, the moral intensity, the focus on safetyism he described, it was the arrival of this generation on campus.
So the same energy signature, but manifesting differently.
It appears so. The same Pluto and Sagittarius impulse that had externalized globally as jihad and war during their early childhood. Now it seems to have turned inward, manifesting in battles over identity, safety, and ideology within institutions.
Wow.
Academia basically became a new arena for these absolutist moral frames. It's almost as if the energy needed a new outlet, and the university campus was it.
That's quite a reinterpretation of campus culture wars.
It offers a different perspective, certainly.
Okay, so that takes it through the 2010s and now the 2020s.
And now, as we move into the 2020s, those Pluto and Sagittarius students have aged into their 20s and early 30s, and their characteristic cultural style, turning everything into a high-stakes moral drama, seems to have generated what the research describes as an equal and opposite anti-woke backlash.
The pendulum swings back, but with the same force.
Exactly. The sources are clear. Both sides still carry that distinct Pluto and Sagittarius, flavor crusading, highly moralistic, uncompromising.
So the form shifts, but the underlying energy remains.
That's the argument. It shifts from, say, global jihad and the war on terror to campus culture wars, and then evolves into these broader political anti-woke mobilizations we see now. The common thread is that absolutist crusading style.
Fascinating. But there's another piece to this puzzle, isn't there? The technology.
Ah, yes. This brings us to a crucial amplifier in all of this. The simultaneous rise of smartphone technology and social media.
It feels impossible to separate these trends from the tech.
Completely. Think about those key dates again. The iPhone launched in 2007. Facebook opened widely around 2006. Instagram popped up in 2010.
Right.
So by 2012, when that first Pluto and Sag wave hit college, smartphones and social media weren't just available, they were universal in teens' lives.
They became the default way of communicating and experiencing the world for that age group.
Exactly. And they created the perfect megaphone for the Pluto and Sagittarius youth's specific generational mode of expression.
Exactly.
Exaggeration, performance, moral drama. Social media is almost tailor-made for that kind of expression, isn't it?
It really is. Performance is key. Everything's public.
So what might have once been, say, a contained classroom debate or a niche activist flyer, suddenly it could scale to become a viral culture war sensation overnight.
Fueled by algorithms designed for engagement, which often means outrage.
Precisely. Hate's great rewiring and that critical mass of smartphone social media adoption coincided exactly with the first wave of Pluto in Sagittarius students entering college.
It's the convergence again?
The result seems to be that their innate intensity found the perfect technological tool to broadcast, amplify, and polarize everything. Every micro-conflict becomes public theater. Every disagreement becomes an existential crusade. Every personal wound becomes a profound moral injury demanding public recognition.
And that dynamic just keeps feeding itself online.
And importantly, the anti-woke movement of the 2020s is presented as a mirror image of this exact dynamic. It's also heavily fueled by smartphones, social media algorithms, and that same polarizing energy.
So again, it's not just one side using the tools or having the energy.
No. What's truly striking here, according to the sources, is that Pluto in Sagittarius doesn't just radicalize one faction. It seems to radicalize the entire playing field. And social media acts as the accelerant pouring gasoline on that existing fire.
Creating this incredibly intense binary landscape we're all trying to navigate.
That's the picture painted by connecting these different analyses.
So where does that leave us now? Looking ahead, Pluto isn't in Sagittarius anymore, right?
Correct. So looking ahead, Pluto is currently moving into Aquarius. It's been dipping in and out, but it's settling there.
Aquarius, and what's the significance of that?
Well, Aquarius, like Sagittarius, is traditionally considered a masculine or active air sign in astrology. It's associated with ideas, networks, technology, progress, but also sometimes detachment or ideological rigidity. And the sources we looked at note that this current shift into Aquarius seems to align with the rise and perhaps intensification of a new anti-woke crusade, particularly from the right wing. They even predict it might intensify further around 2025.
Interesting. Why the connection to masculine signs?
It's an interesting contrast they draw. Pluto's previous transit was through Capricorn from roughly 2008 to 2024. Capricorn is often seen as a more feminine or receptive earth sign associated with structures, institutions.
Like higher education, where much of the earlier phase played out?
Exactly. The research links that Capricorn period astrologically to the more institutional setting, maybe the more democratic or collective nature often associated with universities, where those initial Pluto and Sag waves first made their mark.
And Aquarius being masculine active.
The perspective offered in the source material, and we're just relaying this viewpoint impartially, is that the populist right wing, with its focus on decisive action or challenging established norms, finds a certain resonance with the energy of these traditionally masculine signs like Aquarius.
Okay, so that's the perspective offered on the current shift. Food for thought.
It is. It's presented as one possible framework for understanding the current dynamics.
So let's try and synthesize this. What does this all mean for us, for you listening?
Well, I think the core insight here is seeing how this astrological archetype Pluto in Sagittarius combined with the undeniable sociological impact of the digital age,
Yeah.
how they come together to offer a really compelling, if unconventional, explanation for the unique intensity and, that word again, absolutism of our current culture wars.
It's almost eerie, isn't it, how two seemingly completely different ways of looking at the world, sociology and astrology, describe the exact same structural break in society around the same time.
And astrology seems to pinpoint the timing with remarkable precision.
What feels profound here isn't just that the timelines align, but what it might suggest about deeper patterns. Maybe even archetypal forces that drive human groups.
Are there cyclical forces that just find new ways to express themselves through whatever technology is available?
Making history rhyme, as they say, rather than simply repeat. It forces you to wonder.
It does.
So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. As you navigate this polarized cultural landscape, and it's hard to consider how recognizing these potential deep-seated patterns might change things.
How does seeing this interplay of generational energy, tech amplification, and maybe even these historical cycles affect your own approach?
Does it change how you engage with the debates?
Yeah.
Or maybe just how you observe them?
Perhaps it invites a deeper, more informed perspective, something beyond just reacting moment to moment.
Yeah, maybe it gives you a new lens, a different way to understand the often baffling world around us.